Well, good morning. Welcome to Mirador Television, broadcasting from the White Hart Hotel in Lewis. I'm Keith Hayes, and for this first hour, we chat through what's happening in the news, newspaper headlines, and it seems as if there is a sea change on the way in politics, and if so, all I can say is about time too. About time too. We've had enough of obfuscation, of excuses, of silly decisions, of infighting, of politicians, all 650 of them, doing anything other than that which they should be doing. How do we get top people into Westminster? Oh, I don't know. The trouble is, of course, is it's all embedded in a system now. Very difficult to run as an independent, very expensive, and for some reason, the voters shy away from it and instead vote for dickheads who are put up by their party, quite often on a ratio. You must be a woman, or you must be a homosexual, or you must be this, or you must be that. The whole system is wrong. But don't mention the word reform to a politician, because a politician will nobble you straight away. Reform is a dirty word to them. They do not want change. And if you are in a position with an assured pension, huge expenses, cushy lifestyle, and a decent salary, would you want change either? Perhaps what we should do is get a bill passed through Parliament. We could certainly get one debated for 100,000 voters. One to get a bill debated that MPs sit for a year without any salary, without any expenses, without anything, just simply to show their commitment to the country and to the electorate. I can see that one coming off, can't you? Anyway, there has been some considerable change in Parliament, not Parliament, at the Tory party conference. So let's just take a look at what's happening. And broadly, the roundup of the newspaper headlines is Braverman's migration hurricane warning, and Beckham is a Netflix shock. Of course, you can almost guarantee that we will not get the one that we want. The Express, normally the paper that's sympathetic to the government, starts with a huge Tory row about to erupt as Rishi Sunak to confirm HS2 Birmingham to Manchester high-speed line is being scrapped. The Prime Minister is expected to announce that HS2 trains will switch to normal tracks for the stretch of line north of Birmingham. Well, that's what they say. So Normally, the Express of anybody would have the inside track. So it has been widely reported that he's going to do this. So I think that we can take it that is going to happen. I have to say, it is not an area of expertise. I wish I could have a chat to my good friend Norman Baker, who is a transport expert. I wish we could. I could have a word with him to ask him what the ramifications are. Personally, I find it difficult to see that improving a present line instead of spending billions and a new line is going to show that much difference. But then again, I am not an expert. Now, the Financial Times, Braverman's migration hurricane warning, and Beckham Netflix shocks. The Financial Times, a bond sell-off deepens as high rates prospects spook the market. The 30-year-old U.S. yield touches a 16-year peak, and the global route hits stocks and currencies. That's the basic story. But indeed, they have a hurricane warning. Braverman accuses Tories of being squeamish over tackling immigration. Images of Home Secretary Suella Braverman giving her speech at the Conservative Party conference are littered across many of Wednesday's front pages, including the Financial Times. In it, she claimed a hurricane of migrants is set to enter the UK, which the paper sums up with the headline, Hurricane Warning. Its main story, though, is about a 16-year peak in the 30-year US yield, which reached 4.91% on Tuesday for the first time since 2007. I'm not going to give you a lesson on bonds. Take it from the experts who are reporting. The Eye, Braverman's hardline job application to become Tory leader. Aha. So the Eye sees it as a pitch by Braverman to become boss. The Eye describes Miss Braverman's speech as a hardline job application to one day replace Rishi Sunak as leader of the Conservative Party. Cabinet ministers are privately accusing her of jockeying for the top job and not focusing on her current role, which the paper reports. Her current role is that she's Home Secretary. The paper reports elsewhere there are diary entries belonging to the government former chief scientific advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance, which have been read out at the start of stage 2 of the COVID inquiry. One entry accused the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson of flip-flopping over the pandemic. I have to say, I don't put my faith in civil servants any more than I put my faith in the rest of the 650 followers that they've got. It all seems to me that it's got into a terrible rut, and that whatever they do is only going to keep leading back to the same old thing: is if you do nothing, nothing gets done. The Daily Mail, Me, David, and Aftermath of That Affair by Posh. That's what the banner says. What a wig lifter. This was the first properly spellbinding, dramatically assured speech seen at a conference for years. That's what Quinton Letts, the diarist for the Daily Mail, says on the Suella speech. In a front page dedicated almost entirely to Miss Braverman's speech, the Daily Mail calls it spellbinding and warns that the establishment will be appalled. But Tory activists, bar one, loved it. Above some animated images of the Home Secretary sits another of Victoria and David Beckham. In a new Netflix documentary titled Beckham, just Beckham, and released on Wednesday, the couple, after 20 years, discussed the ex-footballer's alleged affair with Rebecca Lewis, the paper writes. The Times. And the banner, it says, "Warning, you could be a workaholic." Yes, you're right. Bosses risk discrimination payouts for WhatsApp snubs. But the main story, the main headline is Braverman's migration hurricane is coming. Both Miss Braverman and the Beckhams also appear on the front page of the Times with more details of the Tory minister's speech. The paper says Miss Braverman launched another attack on British human rights law and signalled her determination to abolish such legislation. A story about the potential risk workers face by excluding a colleague from a WhatsApp group, which a judge ruled could be discriminatory, also featured prominently on the newspaper's front page. Now that's going to impact on everybody, isn't it? Right? You won't let somebody into your WhatsApp group, you could be accused of discrimination. Wow. Oh, now that one's got ramifications. Boy, has that one got ramifications. The Sun. Beckham Netflix shock. Victoria, my pain over David's affair. Our crisis in 2003 was the hardest. Bex, we were under such pressure. Beckham Netflix shock is how the Sun describes Victoria Beckham's decision to speak out about the pain she felt in the wake of her husband's alleged affair. The now fashion designer says in the documentary that the period in 2003 was the hardest time of her life, according to the paper. Let me just pause for a moment just to see if we got... yes, we seem to have Wi-Fi, all right. So we'll motor on. Hounds of love, what makes someone a dog person? That's the banner in The Guardian. And The Guardian's headline is, the PM declares politics broken in a bid to wrest back control. And there's a side issue. India kicks 41 Canadian diplomats out of Delhi. Wow. Back to politics. The Guardian goes big on Mr. Sunak's keynote conference speech, which is scheduled for midday today, saying the Prime Minister will tell delegates that voters are exhausted and pledged to the British political system, but he will face accusations that after 13 years of Tory government, many of the problems he diagnoses in Westminster are of his party's making. That's what the Guardian's political editor, yes, the Guardian's political editor, Pippa Carrara adds. The Daily Telegraph. Sunak, I'll change the status quo. The PM promises to tackle broken politics. The broken political system in a series of big calls before the election. This is in the Daily Telegraph. And the side banner, side column is Johnson's COVID decisions where bipolar reveals the Valence diary. This is the inquiry into the handling of COVID. It's always easy in hindsight, isn't it? Yeah, always easy. In another Conservative conference heavy front page, the Daily Telegraph focuses on Mr. Sunak's incoming speech, as well as the one Ms. Braverman has already given. Despite being in hot water over HS2, the paper says the Prime Minister will promise billions of pounds for other transport schemes. Matt Pritchett, the paper's cartoonist, gives his take on the row with a drawing of what appears to be cavemen discussing how they started to invent the wheel. But it got too expensive to finish. The Daily Express. Suella hurricane of migration is sweeping millions towards Britain. And Princess Kate's heartfelt gesture. Those are the two banners. The Prime Minister is the headline. I'll tear up rulebook on 30 years of broken politics. Well, he's got it right on that. But you know, when they all start pointing, it's the Tories, it's Labour, etc., it's all of them. It's all of them. They've all gone along with it, no matter who. I think that's absolutely right. Politics is totally broken, totally discredited. Nobody has much time for politicians anymore. And if they're going to win it back, they've all got to do it. The infighting, party infighting has got to stop, but also the two main parties, for that matter, the three main parties, should actually set some guidelines as to how they are going to attack real issues and not this silly nonsense of yelling at one another. Toffs. People who victims. It's all a nonsense. The Mirror says another day of excuses. Today, the Prime Minister will blame our country problems on the political system. But remind us, Rishi, how many years have the Tories had to fix Britain? Fair question, I guess. 13, unlucky for us. But that's very typical of the sort of rubbish that it is put towards this problem. The Mirror gets worse and worse and worse. At one time, it was a respectable paper. Now, even its own people laugh at it. Another day of excuses, says the Daily Mirror. It dismisses the Prime Minister's plan to blame our country's problems on the political system by asking him directly to remind us how many years the Tories have been in power to fix Britain. The answer, which also appears on the paper's front page in bold yellow, is 13. Yeah. Metro. It's justice for Jade. Minister ends bizarre farce that gives killer parents their day in family court. The Metro focuses on the government's new legislation, Jade's Law, which will see parents and guardians found guilty of murdering their partner have their parental rights taken away. It is named after Jade Ward, who was stabbed and strangled by her partner. He went on to retain parental rights over their 4 sons from prison. Justice for Jade is how the paper sums up the move. The Daily Star. The Star normally gives us a bit of a giggle. Finally, some good news about evil computer pals. Psycho scumbag. Chatbots aren't all bad. Business boss says big-brained wrong-uns will extend our lifespan to 100 and allow us to work a 3-day week, assuming they don't kill us all first. AI psycho scumbag chatbots are the focus of the Daily Star's Wednesday issue, with the paper claiming the computers might actually help humans live longer and work less, as long as they don't murder us all first. Right, and that's can't you believe it? Let's see if we can get the weather up, shall we? Oh, well, why don't we do it this way? Here we go. Today, it's a bit cooler today. It's down to 18, and actually, I must say that coming in on my little motor scooter it feels it too. The temperature right now is standing at actually 13 degrees, but there are sunny intervals and a moderate breeze. The sunny intervals fairly early on, about now, until 11 o'clock, and then it clouds over. In the afternoon, the sun starts to peek out again, and by the time that we get around to tea time, we've got clear skies and a moon, a quarter moon. Wow, wow, wowee. There's zero chance of rain all day, no rain at all. But during the week, things are going to improve. Thursday, the tomorrow, the 5th, we're going to get. I'm just looking at the time because I'm expecting a clinical call this morning from the hospital just to deal with Parkinson's, which I've got to do for 10 minutes. So I'm just keeping my eye on the time, so that I know when somebody calls it's worthwhile answering. Yes, 18 tomorrow again, with much the same sort of thing as sunny periods. Then on Friday, we go back up to 20 and full sunshine. And Saturday, 21, full sunshine. Sunday, 22, full sunshine. Monday, 22, full sunshine. Tuesday, we dip back down to 21, and it's scattered sunny periods. And Wednesday, I'm afraid we've got a return of rain on Wednesday, and the temperature will dip to 21. So that's the weather today. Once again, sunny intervals and a moderate breeze. That's up from a gentle breeze yesterday. So where are we now? Oh, I'm not absolutely sure. There we go. Yeah, there I am. And the time is 8:25. So in going through the newspaper headlines, it's taken us about 25 minutes. In fact, exactly 25 minutes. We've been going 24 minutes and 32 seconds. Excuse me if I take a sip of my morning coffee. And the paper has got more or less. It's amazing that the Beckham story it takes exactly the same stage of importance as the politics, and But let's just quickly look, because Quentin Letts, who is no slouch as a journalist, says, this is what he says, what a wig lifter. This was the first properly spellbinding, dramatically assured speech seen at a conference for years. So what did she have to say in it? Labour's Criminal Rights Act. Our country has become enmeshed in a dense net of international rules that were designed for another era, and it is Labour that turbocharged their impact by passing the misnamed Human Rights Act. I'm surprised they didn't call it the Criminal Rights Act. Ooh, tough stuff. Yes, tough. The immigration hurricane. The wind of change that carried my own parents across the globe in the 20th century was a mere gust compared to the hurricane that is coming. Take the knee, Starmer. The British people will get to decide if they want to curb woke with Rishi Sunak or let it run riot with Keir. Take the knee, Starmer. Ooh. Open borders under Labour. The choice between Conservatives and Labour is the choice between strong borders and no borders. Each time I have gone to Parliament to improve the law on immigration, Labour has tried to block us, always aided by their allies in the third sector. Ooh. Taunts Sadiq Khan over record on crime. To those who ask whether Labour can be trusted to fight crime, I have a two-word answer: Sadiq Khan. Ooh, wow. That's what's fighting stuff. Luxury beliefs of the privileged. We, the Conservative Party, stand with the many, the law-abiding, hard-working, common-sense majority, against the few, the privileged, woke minority, with their luxury beliefs, who wield influence out of proportion to their numbers. Ooh. The poison of woke ideology. Highly controversial ideas are presented to workforces and the public as if they are motherhood and apple pie. Gender ideology, white privilege, anti-British history. The evidence demonstrates that if you don't challenge this poison, things just get worse. Well, I go along with that a bit. Keir would take us properly woke. Imagine what would happen if he became Prime Minister. Luxury beliefs would reign supreme. Britain would go properly woke. And the little comment in the side boxes, as she stared hard at the audience, no one dared even squeak. Well, you've got to say she's gutsy. You have to make up your own mind as to whether you think what she's saying is true. But there is no question that she went square on with some of the issues that are at the forefront. Of our society, particularly the debunking of British history. That is nonsense. And pulling down statues for slavery is ridiculous. Not only that, it's selective. I know of at least 3 prominent slavers here that haven't been touched. Not even verbally. But one was thrown out of the House of Commons having an argument with the Speaker about slavery. Not a dicky bird. If you're going to actually do something, then you've got to do it properly and not play favorites, because that just shows the weakness of your own argument. we are in a strange period of not human history. When the history books are written, when they're read in 100 years' time, we'll probably read them much as any other history book about a period. It will say there was civil unrest, civil uproar. It will say that wars broke out. It will detail the history of rail and give reasons why one or other decision was a good one. It's easy in retrospect. And that's what the Wokes do. They look at things in retrospect. What we want is to tackle the problems that we have today. Immigration is a problem. If you make that statement, I doubt if there are very many who would argue otherwise. It's how we handle it and why we handle it. Yes, I know, as everybody would know, people who are recent immigrants, and nice people they are. But it doesn't really matter whether they're nice or not. Another 50,000 could all be nice. Does that mean that we have to throw the rule book away and look after them? My guess is that most people would say, no, that's silly. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the economy. We don't have the will. And we don't have the social acceptance to do that. But to just wring our hands and say, oh, something must be done, does not mean that we just complacently allow our society to be fragmented. And she's right there. The other thing is, I actually, it bothers me that politicians particularly, but also what I would call do-gooders, react to the emotion of the moment. It's interesting that there are now people in our patch, people from Ukraine who are looking for a place to live, having been taken in on the flush of emotion. But the war has gone on much longer than anybody thought. People have got tired of having their homes populated by other people from outside. Their compassion has weakened with experience, and so they say, I'm sorry, I can't look after you anymore. That's worse than saying in the first instance, no, we've got to find some other way to handle this. It is a good example of how politicians have got their own agenda, which has very little to do with the public good. Recently, we lost a mayor, a much beloved mayor. There was a concert held in the town hall. People lauded this man. Stephen Catlin, we'll name him. And rightly so. One of his pet projects was the Secret Garden, which is the old Pinwell Lane, a strip of land between Friars Walk and doesn't quite stretch up because it's now blocked by a building to the High Street. he turned it from a strip of brambled, rubbishy land into a beautiful, yes, magic garden. He did it himself, well, with the help of one or two friends. He did it himself. And there were so many plaudits about this when mourning him and what the politicians were going to do in his memory to make sure that this secret garden would extol the virtue of this very extraordinary politician. He was one of those rare politicians who understood the game, who understood the rules of the game and could actually follow them to the benefit of everybody. And right now, those worthy thoughts, those worthy ideas are in the rubbish bin. The secret garden has been let go. It's a shambles. This television station offered to mount a project. We got a gardener. We've got a group of people who were interested in making sure that it was looked after. And we were brushed aside by those people who wanted to wave the flag and say, we'll do it. Well, they haven't. And that's not unusual for politicians. The thing is that it has a direct impact on us. And what they don't realize is that it has a direct impact on them, because we see firsthand how they implement stuff to our betterment. No, they do not. It's all about self-aggrandizement, all about self-glory, all what we are going to do, but we never get round to it. And that is significant for local politicians. They get so involved in politics, so involved in saving the world, so involved in making us all believe that there is a glorious future in their hands, we don't get the potholes filled in. And that's the sort of thing that happens. And that's the sort of thing that happens at a national level. So when I say I don't pay much attention to what 650 MPs do, or at least I pay attention and I don't give them much credence, and I scorn their rejection of reform, then yes, if, and it's a big if some of the things that Suella Braverman mooted as necessary to be done, some of them make sense. And pulling down statues isn't one of them. If those people who are wokes want to pull down statues, let them think twice about why they're doing it. Because, and she is right, it's just a small number of people making themselves feel good. I've no doubt about their sincerity. The thing is that they've come out of an education system which has failed miserably and which continues to fail. And if you say it doesn't, how do you explain all the people who go and, I think it's called, go on the dole when they're perfectly capable of doing work? They don't want to work. Now, it didn't matter. In my day, it didn't matter. Well, it does matter. whether in fact you are taught A, B, C. What does matter is whether you have the ethic to go to work, the ethic to do something you may not like doing, that is hard to do, that you have to pull yourself out of bed just to get to the point where you can do things that you do want to do, and you've proved yourself, and you've learned what the workplace is all about, and what the workforce is all about. As for the doctors, they should hang their heads in bloody shame. They really should. There is a whole profession for whom I've lost total respect. Oh, they're nice, I go down to the surgery, they smile. I've got a phone, whatever you call it, appointment this morning. I've got a phone appointment this morning. And the person at the other end, never met him before, will be polite, and he'll ask me some questions. And eventually he'll come back with some resolution. Then he'll go on strike. So it doesn't matter what the resolution is, the chances are I'll never get it implemented. If the politicians really want to dig into what the problems are, first of all, we have not resolved the issues that lockdown threw up, that COVID managed to create. We simply haven't addressed them. We've just applied the old principles before to a new scenario. And when it goes wrong, they just dump on the average person for not understanding. And corporate Britain is as culpable as political Britain. And somehow, it's those of us who are in some other bubble who take the blame. It's all our fault, not theirs. And there's one thing that really pisses me off is when people in various sectors deal with you because they have to, and the patronizing tone they take, as if to say, you poor soul, you're outside the remit that gives me some sort of privilege. Well, certainly I'm outside that remit. I don't need you to be patronizing. What I need you to do is to help me. And where do we see that help? Certainly not in the local town hall. Certainly not in the local district council. A bunch of people who ponce around with one view, politics. That's all they think about, politics. I'm sorry, politics is a means to an end, not an end in itself. And the sooner you get out of that way of thinking, the better. It is not nice. It is not easy to live with. It doesn't cross your mind that you may have to try to change. It doesn't cross your mind that reform is necessary. It doesn't cross your mind that anybody should challenge it. So I expect Ms. Braverman's stance will have a heap of abuse and disregard on her head, on her shoulders. The one good thing about her is she does seem capable of handling it. This woman is like Margaret Thatcher, doesn't seem to be for turning. But she, not because she's a conservative, but because she's a politician that stood up and told it like it is, has got my support. And that is not being party politically biased. She has got my support. And if we had more like her on either side, the world would be a better place. Britain would certainly be a better place. And let me remind people, when they get into this Labour, Conservative, toffs, people who are socialists or whatever, our entire system of government relies upon strength in both parties. Just because you're in opposition does not mean either that you can abrogate responsibility or that you should cease being as active as if you were a member of the government. Government, opposition, opposition, government. That's the way it should work, instead of the way it does at the moment. The whole hope of rubbish being poured on one another from the back benches. Now, I know exactly anybody who's listening to this, first of all, probably switched it off. I started to listen. But anybody in politics, they'll go away and, oh God, here's another one. He's so naive. He doesn't understand. I don't need to understand because I'm at the receiving end. And I don't like being at the receiving end of what I'm being dished out at the moment, at any level. And that's at parish pump level as well. It's not that the system needs reforming. It's the way of thinking in those in the system that needs reforming. You know, there are 2 or 3 people that I know and that I like who either re-entered or newly entered local politics. God, I don't recognize them. They change in attitude. They change in the way that they look at things. They change in their ideas and ideology. Doesn't mean to say I wouldn't have them still to tea or cocktails. But what I do hate is when they start to behave in a silly, stupid way that somehow they're persuaded they should, instead of being the straightforward, forthright, honest, decent people that we know that they are or were. If I was the local politicians, I would actually call everybody together, the entire council, and I would have a day of debate and let people say, surely this is why we're here. Surely this is what we should be doing. Get some sort of consensus. Get decent people on the go. Get the decent people, or the decent side of these people, working. And if they want to know what's bothering the local electorate, all they've got to do is to spend some time and go out and ask and talk. You don't see a politician anymore the way that they used to be. You don't see them coming down. They don't even hold searches, as far as I'm aware. You don't see them out and about. Yes, he's a friend of mine. So I say there is no bias on this station. But the last Member of Parliament, prior to the present one, Norman Baker, I do not share political views with. It doesn't matter. When we get together, we actually agree, mostly, with our view on what's wrong and what should be done, and what our present Parliament should be up to, and what our present politicians should be doing. But Norman was the epitome of a good constituency member of Parliament. He cared. He knew. He strode the streets. You could see him in 100 different places in his constituency. And yet he still had time to be a thorn in the government's flesh with his famous speeches in Parliament, his famous questions at Prime Minister's Question Time. If you want to model yourself on Norman. Oh, of course, he's got his flaws. Of course, there are some things that he did which would cause you to lift an eyebrow. But he cared, and he applied what every politician should apply. And at the moment, there is no evidence that any of them are. Any of them. Politics is a dirty word. And the sooner the politicians come out of their shell and realize that most of us have lost all respect for them, most of us have no faith in government whatsoever, and most of us who have anything to say are reduced to the same ramblings as they are. Well, if Miss Braverman had the guts to say what she thought publicly, I'm not short of, of doing that on many an occasion. But today, it just appears to me we have got to start thinking. We have got to start asking. We have got to start demanding from our leadership, not the wishy-washy, silly nonsense as I can buy myself a birdcage on expenses type of thinking. Personally, I would take away all expenses from politicians. I accept that they need to have expenses paid, but I would simply make them subject to the same rules and regulations that we all are faced with by the taxman. Then there is no question of privilege. And if they get their fingers wrapped, it's not by their own committees and authority. It is by the same authority that the rest of us get wrapped, our knuckles wrapped. That way we would see transparency, we would see decency, and we would see that the money that is claimed on expenses is exactly for that. No special clauses, no swapping houses, no special deal because you're working in Westminster. I worked in London for half a decade. Take that back, a decade and a half. And I got no special privileges whatsoever because I lived in Lewes. I see no reason why an MP should get special consideration. And don't tell me how hard they work, because they don't work anywhere near as hard as I do, and my colleagues do, and people I know do. That is not at all an argument that I or many people accept. And anyway, even if they do, they know what they're getting into when they stand for election. And they should be prepared to fulfill that obligation. Well, I must say, thank you, Suella. I don't know you, don't much about you, never met you. But the fact that you just stood up and be counted was important to me. And I took the opportunity to see what I could do about it with my own silver tongue. I hadn't planned to do this. And if my rant is illogical in places, so be it. But what I'm saying and how I'm saying it is stream of consciousness. It's what's just going through my mind now, since she has touched, lit a touch fuse. Bonfire shortly. Touch fuses will be it's much in the news. So anybody who's heard anything that I've said probably will shrug and go away. And that is the real sadness of our society. It's the real sadness. We don't want to face up to things. We want things to be cozy. Things cannot stay cozy unless we do stuff ourselves to make our lives better. And we seem to have been running away and doing all sorts of crazy things instead of gritting our teeth and going in hard to right some wrongs, to make changes that are necessary, and to start thinking in the right way. It's the important thing, to start thinking in the right way. Okay, yeah. Well, let's just take a little pause after that. Well, that's it for the news hour. We will be, as I said, I have to disappear for just a few minutes just to have a consultation with my doctor on the phone. We'll be back at 10 o'clock with Mark maybe and a chat about education. And that will more or less take us through to 11 o'clock and a little bit of frippery before we actually have our good friend and a very amusing comedian, I suppose he is, yes, but certainly an entertainer, John Henty. So that's coming up on Mirador Television. Stay with us or come back to us or whatever. For the moment, toodle pip, and we'll see you in a little while.